even if there are moves as far as peace is concerned, and US, of course, indicating that talks are underway, fighting still continues in the Middle East. To talk about the evolving situation, joining me now is renowned security expert in the Middle East, Danny Citrinowicz. Thank you so much, Danny Citrinowicz, for speaking to us here on Times Now. There are reports suggesting that Iran, of course, is denying peace talks to the United States, which Trump says are very much on. What do you anticipate as far as the peace process is concerned? Do you see any breakthrough, especially when there are indications that off-ramp talks are underway?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I will say that the chances for reaching an agreement are very slim because of the fact that there are two main problems now in the negotiations. One is there is a gap of positions. The Iranians do not accept something that they didn't accept before the war. So the U.S. demands actually call for the capitulation of Iran, and Iran will not forgo its stance right now. So it will be very hard to reach an agreement with Tehran now. And the second thing is we have to remember that after the capitation of Khamenei and Ali Larijani, it is very hard to negotiate with the Iranians. The Iranian system is decentralized, meaning that it is very hard to come to a unified voice. And the combination of Iran thinking that it has the upper hand, and the centralization of the system, and the control of the RGC system itself, will make it very hard to reach an agreement, especially when the U.S. President Trump really assumes that Iran is gone weaker, and then he can enforce or dictate an agreement. And for the Iranian standpoint, of course, it's the other way around. They are winning, not losing. So the bottom line of things that if the 15 points will stay as it is, I don't think we'll see a breakthrough, and I think the chances of escalation are bigger than the chances of finding some sort of political diplomatic solution to the Iranian problem as for today.
Now, Iran's demands include retaining its missile program, continuing uranium enrichment, and asserting its authority over the Strait of Hormuz. So are you suggesting in that sense that these are demands that the U.S. is unlikely to allow for in terms of the long haul? Are we looking at a long-drawn war or a chance that the United States might back off given the kind of economic impact and havoc that oil supply chains are having across the world and subsequently fuel prices?
Well, the Straits of Hormuz is an interesting development during this war. Actually, as we know, the Iranians are using what we call asymmetric doctrine, when they're using the weakness for their own strength. One of those weaknesses that they're actually utilizing is actually the geography of Iran, and the strength is that they can actually control who's passing the Hormuz Straits. The Hormuz Straits are not closed, they're open only for the tankers that Iran is approving them to cross. So the problem is that the genie is out of the bottle, meaning that the Iranians don't return back. So in order to open the Hormuz Straits, as the U.S. think it wants to do, it will have two main options to do that. One, military force, significantly, because anything else won't help. Even if the Americans would take Hog Island or would try to threaten the Iranians won't open the Straits. For them, it's a strategic move. They're not going to capitalize on that. The other options of the U.S. is actually reaching an agreement with the Iranians for opening the Straits. But then the U.S. will have to pay, meaning just to give some sort of compensation to the Iranians for opening the Straits. So the bottom line of things is that I don't think it will open anytime soon. Even more than that, we have to remember that even if the war will end tomorrow, the Iranians are not going to forgo the control of the Straits. They're going to use that like a Suez Canal. They're going to blackmail tankers that are going back and forth, taking millions of dollars as a compensation for the damages of the war. So I don't think that we'll see anytime soon a change in the Iranian control over the Hormuz Straits.
Right. You've also been quoted as saying the appointment of Mohammad Zolghadar as the Secretary of the National Security Council of Iran is being seen as a step towards militarization, because he's not someone who's a career bureaucrat or a diplomat for that matter. Why do you say this? And the fact is that he has, of course, served as a brigadier general in the IRGC. But are you seeing, with the large number of leaders of Iran who've now been killed, that it is these kind of elements or these individuals who would perhaps lean more towards military options who would be leading the regime there in Iran?
Actually, what we see today is we see a transformation in Iran from Islamic Republic to militarize Islamic Republic. Meaning that what we had before the war, we had a balanced system. We had Ali Khamenei, supreme leader, that actually balanced between the more moderates and the more extreme, mainly the RGC. Now, when we don't have Ali Khamenei, the RGC actually controlling in a way that everything has to come through them, whether politically, diplomatically, negotiation with the US, or definitely everything related to the war itself. Now, adding to that, it seems that they are taking over also other elements within the decision-making process in Iran, thus helping them to increase the leverage over the decision-making process in Iran. Two appointments that they had previously doing that or highlighting that. One is the appointment of Mohsen Rezaei, the guy that was the commander of the RGC, to be the advisor of Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader. And the second, of course, is the appointment of Muhammad Adel al-Radar, that actually he is going to be the head of or secretary of the SNS, a very important body in Iran that in the end of the day actually recommend the supreme leader what to do. Those things are extremely important because they are allowing the RGC to take over of that. Now the new secretary of the SNS is actually a guy that used to be not only a senior in the RGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, but also was in charge of suppressing demonstrations in 1999, 2009, a very, very extreme person. So the combination of the fact that the RGC is controlling now Iran in terms of decision-making process, taking care also or having the leverage over everything that Mujtaba is doing or saying, and of course the SNS, actually enable them in the end of the day to control all decision process in Iran. So if someone thinks that it was hard to negotiate with Iran before the war, it will be harder to negotiate with Iran after the war.
Right. The question that many are also looking at is that while on the one hand, Trump may have made the first overture towards peace, talk about not attacking energy infrastructure, not attacking civilian infrastructure, the reports now coming in that Ali Reza Tangsiri, the commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Navy, has been killed in an Israeli operation. Now, this would indicate that Israel has yet not stepped back from its targeted assassination policy against senior Iranian leadership. And in that context, what does this mean for the ongoing or the potential peace talks between the United States and Iran? Does this make US's peace efforts more difficult, or perhaps does it derail it altogether?
Well, Israel's policy is quite simple. Israel wants to prevent Iran from being a strategic threat to the state of Israel. In order to do so, since the beginning of the war, we are doing two main things. We are attacking the military industry of Iran and decapitating the senior leadership of Iran. Now, it's not going to undermine the regime in a way there's going to be a revolution, but it's really helping us downgrading the Iranian capability. One of the examples for that is last night, Ali Reza Tangsiri, the commander of the RGC Navy, was killed by Israel. And I think for Israel, it's important activity for two main reasons. Actually, it highlights to the President Trump that we are working with him in order to open the Hormuz Straits. But also, it's a signal for the fact that Israel is continue trying to hit military commanders, high-rank military commanders of the RGC, creating a sense that they have to run in terms of understanding that Israel is after them. So it's very important development. And unfortunately, it's not going to lead for Iran opening the Straits. As we said earlier, it's a strategic move by Iran. So even after the decapitation of Tangsiri, nothing will change. The bottom line in that regard, that Israel is waiting for President Trump's decision. For Israel, we can expand the war also attacking civilian infrastructure. But everything comes down to President Trump in the White House. Whatever he decides regarding the ultimatum, whether to strike the civil infrastructure in Iran, yes or no, at the end of the day, he will decide, and Israel will implement. If we decide to stop, we will stop. If we decide to expand, we will expand, because of the fact that we are highly depending on President Trump and the decision regarding this war.
What are your inferences about the current terms of engagement between US and Israel? Are both sides fully aligned? Are there emerging differences in strategy? Because we've seen differences. When South Pars was attacked, when Tehran's energy infrastructure was attacked, there was a very different view coming in from the US than that of Israel.
Well, operationally, there is a very good cooperation between IDF, the Israel Defense Intelligence, and CENTCOM, Central Command. Operationally on the ground, everything worked almost flawless in so many ways. But in terms of strategy, we have to say that we don't see the alignment right now. Because basically, as I said, Israel is interested in destroying as much as it can in Iran, making sure that Iran won't pose a threat. The U.S. was against Israel attacking civilian infrastructure because of the fact that they're thinking about the day after and hoping that, again, people go to the streets and they won't have a failed state. So they have the energy facilities and other things that they can use. Now, President Trump is becoming, towards the end of this week, he will have to decide what to do. He can support the Israeli position and extend the war in a way, like he said in the ultimatum, attacking the civilian facilities of Iran, and then there will be alignment between Israel and the U.S. Or he can decide to disconnect himself from Israel and try to reach an agreement that Israel, of course, opposes, or thinking about some sort of a ceasefire that Israel will be obligated to, but I don't think it will want to do that because of the fact that Israel is interested to continue the war as much as we can to degrade the Iranian capabilities. So the question of alignment, actually, we'll see what happening this end of the week and the ultimatum, and everything that Trump will decide will help us understand whether there's going to be alignment with the purpose and targets between Israel and the U.S. or not. If Trump would go diplomacy, then there's not going to be alignment. If Trump going to expand the war, then definitely Israel will be on board, support the U.S. in everything the U.S. is trying to do kinetically against Iran.
Right. There are reports emerging that approximately 1,000 U.S. Marine Corps personnel have been deployed now in the entire Middle East, and this comes amidst the speculation that U.S. may be trying to take control of Iran's crown jewel, the Kharg Island. Why do you think this is happening, and is this a distinct possibility? There have been similar threats that have been made from the U.S.'s side. Do you think it's actually likely to happen now?
Well, if U.S. is interested in expanding the war, it has two main options. One is attacking the civil infrastructure, or the second one is using the Marines that just came to the Gulf in order to invade Iran. Now, they can invade the three islands near the Hormuz Straits, the Greater and Lesser Tunab and Abu Musa, thus actually challenging or putting pressure on Iran to open the straits. Or they can take Kharg Island. Why Kharg Island is so important is because of the fact that 90% of the Iranian oil actually are exiting through Kharg Island. There is no production of oil there, but the pipelines are pushing the oil from the oil fields in Iran. Now, if you're going to do that, it's extremely important because then it will be a significant blow to the Iranians' ability to export oil. But we have to say a couple of things of that we have to emphasize. It will be very hard to do so because the Iranians are getting ready for that. They're mining the surroundings of the island itself. Second, if the U.S. will try to invade, they will attack the island from Iran. It's only 30 kilometers between the island and Iran itself. Iran is not going to capitulate, and it's not going to open the Hormuz Straits, even if the Kharg Island will be taken. And the Iranian retaliation will be very harsh, and they will attack the energy facilities in the area, in the Gulf states, like they said. So Kharg Island is not a silver bullet solution for this war. It definitely can put a pressure on Iran, but you also have to remember that Iran can exit its oil from other places, not only from Kharg Island. So the bottom line of things that definitely the U.S. can do that. Unfortunately, I don't think it's a silver bullet that actually will lead to the end of this war.
Right. You have Benjamin Netanyahu who says that we are changing the face of the Middle East. Do you believe that this war is permanently altering the power balance in the region, with Israel now becoming a regional superpower?
Well, we don't know how this war will end, so it's very hard to assess that. I think that if this war will end and this regime stays, not be toppled, then definitely we cannot talk about the new Middle East. Actually, it will be an old Middle East, even more worse than that. I think that Iran is more radicalized than the war started. Yes, Iran is weaker, but more radicalized and more chances, for example, of rethinking about its nuclear strategy and maybe try to build a nuclear bomb. Second, I don't see the Gulf states rushing towards Israel after the war. I think there's a lot of anger in the fact that U.S. and Israel pushed them to this war. Maybe behind the scene we'll see more cooperation because Israel definitely has a lot of technology that it really can help the Gulf states to counter Iran in the future. But I think that this war is not solving the Palestinian problem. This war actually is not helping us in seeing it by the Gulf states as a moderate actor in the Middle East. So I think that the bottom line of that is I don't think that this war actually will change the Israeli posture in the region. Unfortunately, I'm not sure it's actually there will be a change. I'm not sure it will be for the negative side and not from the positive side. Again, we have to wait and see how the war will end. But for now, I think that this is the situation.
Right. As a Middle East expert, I must ask you, how long can Arab states withstand this situation? The oil, critical energy production is effectively being disrupted. Has this war then created a lasting sense of insecurity amongst the Gulf states? And also, of course, their image earlier was of safe havens. There are also mixed reactions coming in. There is, for instance, Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson who said that Iran's a country that has existed since ancient times and will continue to do so, and that coexistence is necessary. Now, this is a day after Donald Trump called Mohammed bin Salman a warrior and said that he's fighting alongside the United States. Doesn't this suggest there's some amount of confusion or strategic ambiguity amongst the Arab states itself? On the one hand, they're being hit. On the other hand, these are the kind of reactions coming in.
Well, I think that this war is a catch-22 for the Gulf states. I don't think there is a good solution for this war for them, because if the war will end and this regime will stay, then they will have to interact with a very radicalized regime in the future. And if this war will end when this regime is being toppled, then definitely they will suffer the consequences of refugees, probably the maritime routes and things like that. So I don't think they have a good solution. This is why they were against this war from the get-go. They were afraid they're going to pay the price for what Israel and the U.S. are trying to achieve. And now I think they think that they were right. The problem that they have is they don't know what to do. Because, yes, they can attack Iran, but then I don't think they will add more to the Israeli and U.S. attacks. And they will cross an Iranian red line that actually would increase the Iranian activity against them. We have to remember that Iran can hit them hard in terms of the energy facilities, but also the civilization capabilities that they have. So I think that they are very cautious in that regard. The second thing that definitely they can do something against the U.S., but as I mentioned, I don't think it will have a significant effect given what Israel and the U.S. is doing today against Iran. So I think the option of attacking Iran is still there, obviously. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that they think that actually will be the solution for the problem that they have. I think that they're hoping that this war will end. Regarding Saudi Arabia and MBS, we actually didn't hear him. So we're just hearing reports coming back and forth that he's in favor of continuing this war. But we have other reports saying that he's against it. So we don't know exactly what he's saying. I think there's a big ambiguous in purpose. I think the Saudis in purpose doing that because definitely if they will declare they're joining the war, the risk of Saudi is not only from Iran, but also from the Houthis in Yemen. So I think that they are playing that very cautiously to see how things will develop. But definitely in the end of the war, there's going to be a dramatic change in their strategic way of thinking regarding the U.S. presence in the region, regarding the diversification of support, maybe going also with the Chinese and the Russian. Definitely rearmament, we'll see that dramatically being increased. So the bottom line of things that I don't think that they have a good solution for this, for where they're staying right now. And definitely after the war, they will have to think hard and clear what to do, knowing that they also need to interact more or less with the new Iranian regime because it's just across the bay and or the Gulf, and they cannot ignore them. So definitely they have a war cut out for them in terms of what to do now and definitely the day after the war.
Danny Citrinowicz, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here at Times Now.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
The News Hour at 10.